Hey everybody, welcome back to the Print 3D channel. The July MakerBox has arrived and we're going to open it up, check out some cool new filaments, print a whole bunch of samples, and I'm going to share the results with you guys, so stick around. Hey everybody, welcome back, and thank you for joining me here on the Print 3D channel. We have the July MakerBox in the shop, and we're going to open it up and check out all the cool filaments inside. We're going to print our usual samples and run it through all the usual tests that we do with any filament that enters the shop, and then I'm going to share my results with you guys. This is my second month with the MakerBox, and basically what we're doing is every month they're going to send me a MakerBox for free, and I'm going to review all the filaments. If you saw my previous MakerBox review, which you can watch here, you can see that we really go in depth with these filaments, and I've actually used some of those samples for a project that I'm going to share with you guys in the next coming weeks. But for now, let's go ahead and open this up. Huge shout out and thank you to MakerBox for sending over this filament sample every month for us to test and review on the channel. That's very cool. I very much appreciate it. Of course, we aren't being compensated in any way. There's not a lot of filament in here, so I'm just going to use the samples up as much as I can, and I won't have a whole lot of spare. I'll probably use the same test models that I used in the previous video, which will be the Cali Cat and the low poly rose twist Vase, because those give me a good idea of how the filament actually prints. And that's really what you guys are interested in. Every machine is different, and all the settings will always be different for every single FDM printer out there. So for me to share like retraction and heat settings and stuff like that, it may differ on your machine. So I'll share what my settings are, but I'm not going to run those typical type tests. You guys want to see how this filament prints, and if it's a functional filament, how does it function? So let's go ahead and open up the box and see what we have inside for July. All right, so let's open up the box and see what kind of cool new filaments we have for this month. Now, with every MakerBox that I get, I'm going to run the same amount of tests. Ooh, wrong side for the tape. Run the same tests. Like I said, we're going to do our Cali Cat, and we're going to do our low poly rose twist Vase, and plus we'll do some functional prints just to see what kind of utilization of the filaments that are included in the box. So there could be some cool new filaments that I've never seen before, or there could be some familiar faces, who knows. So let's go ahead and dig right in. Okay, so the first thing I see is a MakerBox exclusive 20% off coupon for the nano polymer adhesive. Now there's a coupon code here, so I'm just gonna cover it with my thumb so you guys can see the coupon. And next is a Read This, which is for the referral program, if I remember correctly. Yeah, you can get a free MakerBox if you refer 3 friends. So this is a really cool option if you are MakerBox subscribers to refer a few people and you get a free MakerBox. Next up, we have an announcement. Announcing new premium 1.75 PLA from filaments from Capricorn. Oh, the guys that make that awesome tubing. Looks like they have some really cool colors on here. I'm going to cover up that QR code so it doesn't activate anything. So you guys can see that. See that? My cameras are Apple devices. You put a QR code up and it switches over and tries to go to a website. So easy. Another advertisement for the Easy Stick, which is the gecko plate. So we'll definitely check that out. We have a Capricorn sticker, so it sounds like there's Capricorn filament to go along with that announcement. And a cool blue MakerBox sticker. And we have a 2019 magnet calendar. So we still have a few months left for that. And of course, a nice little sample of that gecko tech. Now, in the last MakerBox, which again, you can watch that previous video, they had another sample of this gecko tech at the exact same size. And I didn't think I had a printer that this would work on, and I actually do. So now I have 2 pieces that will pretty much cover the entire print bed of that tiny little printer. So that's cool. So I'll be able to use these and the one I got last time. And let's see, the first filament, let's just move this out of the way. I'm gonna have to cover up that QR code when I show you guys the close-up on camera, only because I know it's going to set off, it's gonna trigger the QR code thingy. So this is a tricolor thermochromic lava PLA. Ooh, lava. And it says the hot end temperature is 190 to 220 C. The bed temperature is room to 60. It says speed not listed. Fan, yes. Other, none. And this is made by Capricorn, so this is one of their new filaments. And it says PLA that changes color with temperature between 31 and 45 C. Objects are green at room temperature, then turn pink when held in hands, and yellow at higher temperature. So I've got some pretty hot fingers, and I can see that this has already started changing colors. So here is the filament itself. I hope you guys can see that. It's kind of a dark dirt color, and I'm going to cover up that QR code so you guys can see the front of the package. So this will be some interesting filament to work with. Hopefully it's not picking up the QR codes. So we have some polywood. This is not real wood fill. I've heard of this. Print settings 190 to 210C, bed temperature room to 60, speeds 30 to 50 millimeters per second, fan yes, other none, and it's made by a Polymaker. And the description here says, info, polywood is a wood mimic filament without actual wood powder, which removes all the risks of nozzle clogs, which I never had an issue with to begin with. Polywood is made entirely with PLA using a special foaming technology that exhibits the same density and appearance as wood. And it does really have that wood color to it. It is very brown wood color. Let me cover up the QR so you guys can see the front of the package. Down there. Next up, we have Biofusion. Interesting name, from Extrudr. It's made in Austria, and it's a beautiful blue color. Hot end temperature is 205 to 230 C. The bed temperature is 60 to 90 C. The speed is 60 to 90 millimeters per second, and the cooling is at 30%. The info says Extrudr Biofusion is a new breed of excellent material best suited for designers and makers who are looking for an extra shiny appearance of their printed parts. Besides the good and special looks, Biofusion is also stronger than standard PLA or PETG. You can also use it for mechanical parts. The temperature resistance of the material is up to 75 degrees C. And it's very easy to print and doesn't require a heated bed or a closed building chamber. Not much experience is needed to get extraordinary results. Shine on. Oh, it's an awesome blue color. It's very much a very dark color. And I can see that filament has a bit of a texture to it, so there is a lot of PETG in there. PETG always has some sort of texture to the actual filament. There's the color. And cover the code. You guys can see the front of the package, hopefully. Next up, we have some High Flow Pro MG94 ABS black from Atomic Filaments. Go Atomic Filaments. And we have a hot end temperature of 240 to 250 C, a bed temperature of 190 to 110 C. Speed is not listed, fan is off or low, and other says enclose and ventilation advised. So we don't have any heated chamber printers or ventilation-free printers, as you can see behind me. Those are the printers we're currently using. We might have one coming up on board that has a closed chamber and be able to handle this, but I will definitely try different methods of printing this, and I will be sure to use plenty of ventilation. So anyway, it says made from ultra premium Sabic MG94 ABS resin. Reduced warp, very strong parts, excellent flow and layer adhesion. Prints at low temperatures, 240 to 250 C, ideal, and it flows twice as much as traditional ABS. That sounds great. Excellent choice for fast and strong parts. Prints deep, dark black, and high gloss in caps. Excellent high quality black pigment, fully opaque on the first layer. Now that is a very strong statement because I've printed with a ton of black filament from a ton of makers, and I've only found one that was opaque on the board. So let's go ahead and check that out. Let's check out the validity of that. But this is Atomic Filament. They're a really great filament company, and I have never used any ABS. I have a lot of it. I've never used it because I don't have an enclosure or ventilation system set up on any of my printers. But this should be fun. And it's a very dark black, and I'm very curious how deep that pigment goes. So let's go ahead and check it out on the other camera. There's a nice dark black color. And of course, cover the QR code. Let's see the front of the package. Last one, so it's five little samples of filament, not 6, I was mistaken. And this is bright orange color. It is PC plus PBT. Interesting. Hot end temperature is 235 to 250 C with a bed temperature of 110 C plus. Speed is not listed, fan off or low. Other says ABS slurry, PEI bed, or glue-on bed, enclosure and ventilation advised. So we have 2 filaments now that may require some special printing requirements, and we'll have to figure that out. So in the info it says PC plus PBT is a polycarbonate plus polybutylene. Don't even know what that word is, I'm not going to keep trying. Superior stiffness, balance, great structural integrity, and drop impact performance. Excellent fatigue performance, high chemical resistance to motor oil and grease, manufactured in the USA from 100% virgin resin, then spooled onto 750 gram reels, then the filament is vacuum sealed with Dezign. Interesting. And this is from Push Plastic. I've never heard of these guys either. And I've never printed with any kind of strange polycarbonates before, so this will be a fun filament to go along with that ABS that requires enclosure and ventilation. So let's go ahead and check out that bright orange color. It's really quite vivid. And I'll cover up the QR code and you guys can see the front of the package. All right, so there's our 5 filament samples. We've got some cool stickers. We've got a 2019 calendar, and we've got another sample of the Gecko Tech. Oh, there's more in the box. Nerds. We've got nerds. Nerds. This is like one mouthful. Oh, and the traditional MakerBox button with the traditional logo. So there are our 5 samples. We've got some tricolor thermochromic lava PLA. We've got the Polywood from Polymaker, and the first one was from Capricorn. We have some Biofusion from Extrudr. We have some ABS, some very interesting ABS from Atomic. And we have a really cool polycarbonate blend with another word I can't possibly pronounce in orange. So we have 5 new filaments to try. But the first thing we need to do is break them out of the package. We need to do a diameter test. We need to do a bend test, and I'm definitely going to do a clip test before I load up the printable ones that we have with our current setup, which will be the thermochromic and the bio and the wood. We'll do those first, but of course I need to reset these cameras so we can check out the diameter, the bend test, and the clip test. Let's go ahead and open up these packages and let's clip them and measure them and see where we are before we start printing. Go ahead and check out the PC plus PBT orange. Let's see what this stuff is. Check out some diameters and some clip testing on this one. So let's go ahead and unwrap one end of the twist tie so we can pull out a small length of filament. We don't want to use too much because we want to use as much as we can for our projects. So that is about 1 meter. Let's go ahead and cut it at the zip tie, or at the twist tie. Be careful we don't unleash the rest of it. Let's get our clippers, do a quick clip, set that there. And now to make sure this doesn't come too far undone, because it will, let's go ahead and put our twist tie back on for now. So let's go ahead and start with the bend test. And it's taken a lot of effort, so this is some very soft PLA. Let's give it a clip so you guys can see that. Nice smooth cut. Let's go ahead and measure diameter. Turn on, zero it out, open the jaws. Let's go ahead and do 1.73. 1.74. Okay, diameter is very consistent on this, and we will go ahead and move on to a printing stage with this one, and we'll save this little piece. Let's go ahead and put the filament back in its little bag here. That way we keep it fresh, because it does come with a desiccant bag. Seal this up. Let's get rid of these pieces. Let's move on to the next one. We have the High Flow Pro MG94 ABS Black. So these are the 2 filaments we've never tried before, ABS or any kind of polycarbonate. And these might prove to be a little bit difficult to print with since we do need an enclosure and ventilation. So let's go ahead, instead of undoing the twist tie, let's just pull out a meter. One more loop. There we go. Clip that off. There. Let's go ahead and do the bend test to start with. Oh yeah, some super soft. I've never used ABS before, so I don't know what to expect from this, but that is some very soft filament. Let's go ahead and do the clip. Super soft clip, super, super soft. Let's go ahead and measure diameter. We'll go ahead on, off, 0, 0. Open the jaws. Make sure you guys can see that. 0.75. 0.74. 1.74. 75. 1.75. Two more. 1.74. One more measurement here where we clipped it. 1.74, variable 7473. That's very consistent. Very happy to see that. This is the Atomic Filament ABS. So let's go ahead and slide it back in the bag. Careful of our little twist tie so you don't unravel it. So we're going to remount these on an empty spool if need be. So let's go ahead and get rid of our scraps. We will save those. Next up is the Biofusion. This is some very unique filament that is it's not PLA or PETG. So we'll see what this stuff really is once we get printing with it. Let's get it out of the bag. It has a very satiny finish to it. It's very, very nice. Really can't wait to print with this. So let's set this aside. Let's go ahead and pull out a meter. Yeah, it's got a very smooth feel to it. I thought it was a rough when I saw it in the bag when we were opening up the box, but this has a very, very satiny finish to it on the filament itself, the raw filament. So let's, one more loop, we'll get our meter and be consistent with all of our testing. That's a meter. Let's go ahead and clip it quickly. We'll set this aside. Take a look at the filament. Like I said, super smooth. This is very, very smooth. Let's go ahead and do our bend test. Very nice. Clip test. Ooh, that was super soft. You could barely hear it snap. That's really, really good. I like seeing that. Let's go ahead and on, off, 0, 0. And let's check some diameters. That is all over the board. That's me. 1.74. This is very tightly wound on the spool, so it's kind of hard to keep it straight. 1.72. 1.7, oop, losing control of the filament again. That's me. 1.72. Let's see if I can hold this steady. 1.75. It's a large fluctuation, but again, this could be, this filament is really springy. 1.72. Hope you guys can see these measurements. 1.71. This is from the Extrudr company. And 1.75. And I think that'll be our last measurement. I can try and get one more out of here by the break. It's going to be tough though. It's really curvy. 1.75. All right, well that's pretty consistent. I think I would like to have seen 1.75 across the board, but again, this is some very springy filament, and you can see the nice satin finish to it. So let's go ahead and put it back in the bag until we're ready to use it. We're coming down to the 3 filaments we're going to start with. So this will be our 3rd filament that we print with, the Biofusion. The polywood will be second, and we will go with the thermochromic, the tricolor thermochromic filament first. But I really love the look of this. This is some amazing color. I can't wait to see it printed. Set our scraps aside. Let's grab our polywood. This is from Polymaker. And it has that wood feel right off the bat. I could tell if we hadn't read on the packaging that there wasn't any actual wood fill in here, I would have guessed this was a proper wood fill filament just from the feel alone. So good on you, Polymaker, for creating a filament that really mimics wood. Don't really want to waste too much of this because I'm very curious on how this prints. So I am only going to pull out, oops, over there. Just a meter. I'm very much not wanting to waste this. So let's clip it. It's got a very rough feel to it. Looks like the wood fill. Set this here. Package. You guys can see this is a kind of a matte look to it, but it definitely has a rough appearance and feel to it. So let's go ahead and do our bend test. Now, typically with wood filaments, they usually snap right off the bat. So let's see how this goes. Yep, it snapped right off the bat. And the reason why that is because there are those microscopic either particulate matter being wood dust or metal dust, or in this case, some sort of foaming agent that created a ton of little tiny air bubbles, and that's going to cause it to be somewhat brittle. So let's go ahead and do our cut test. You guys can see. But it is soft. So we have a little bit of conflicting testing information. It broke easily, but it has a soft cut. And that tells me that this might be a little bit difficult to print with, but you know, here on the channel, we like challenges. So we'll go ahead and on off and zero out our micrometer, our digital multimeter, digital, and 1.71. I haven't used Polymaker's filament in the past, and I know they are very consistent with their diameter. I let go of the filament, that's me. 1.75. Proper reading here so you guys can see it. That couldn't possibly be right. Nope, it is 1.65. That's a whole lot of diameter variation. Let's check right near that. Oh, I went too far on that one. 1.65, let's do a gentle touch, 1.68. So that's a very inconsistent diameter. Oops, let's make sure it's straight. 1.74. $1.69. $1.71. Oops. Try that again. No, 1.66. So very inconsistent diameters for the Polymaker polywood. That leads me to believe this might be a little bit difficult to print. I have a 1.75 millimeter system. Any fluctuation over, I think, 10 is going to give me some issues. So those 1.6, that might be an issue. But we're going to try it. Here on the channel, we love challenges. So let's go ahead and put the polywood back into the bag. And we'll keep it dry and safe until we're ready to print with it. This will be our second filament we print with. The first filament is the last one we're going to check, which is the tricolor thermochromic PLA, lava PLA. Set that aside. We'll put our scraps with the rest. And let's check out the last color, tricolor thermochromic lava PLA. Super excited to check this stuff out. Now, I know my hand is going to change the color on it, so let's take a look at the filament itself. It almost looks translucent. It has a very dark color to it, like a brownish, I almost want to say a brownish yellow color. But in my fingers, I can already see the color starting to change. I really don't want to waste any of this, so I'm going to, let's find an end that is available. There's one. And let's push out. Yeah, this is changing color quite quickly. It's an ambient 84 degrees in here, Fahrenheit. So that is going to change its properties a little bit, just being in the ambient temperature. So let's go ahead and pull off. That should be enough. Like I said, I don't want to waste too much of this because I'm really excited about this filament. And I made a mess out of it. All right, Captain, what'd you do here? There we go. So we're going to pull off pretty close to 1 meter, and this stuff is super, super springy. So I have a feeling it's going to clip super soft. Let's go ahead and do a clip there. Set it on the side, and let's do a quick bend test. That fared pretty well, but we do see that color changing right off the bat. Right there because of the friction, warmth. All right, so let's do a clip test. Super soft, and again, we're seeing that whitening of the filament that happens. So I know for a fact that that's going to show up on support material touching the model, so we'll avoid anything with support material. So let's go ahead and zero it out, on, off, 0, 0. And let's take some measurements. This is going to be super springy, so we'll do our best. 1.70. Let's do that again, 1.71. Trying to keep this as straight as possible. 1.72. See, when I move it, I see some variations, but 1.72. Keeping this as straight as possible. 1.71, 72. 1.72. More. Oop. Not straight. 1.71. And our last measurement down here near where we clipped it. Let's try and get a really good straight on measurement. 1.72. Okay, so some pretty consistent diameters around 1.72, 1.73. So that's good to see. Film is very unique. It's already changing color here in the warmth of the garage and where I was touching it. This is going to be a really fun filament to print with. This will be our first one. Until my printer is ready to go, we will go ahead and wrap up this part of the testing. Got some great results. The polywood didn't score so well. Biofusion and these two unique filaments, polycarbonate and the ABS, they all scored really well. So polywood's going to be a little concern of mine, but we're going to go ahead and start with the tricolor thermochromic lava PLA, and we'll go on with the biofusion because I'm really anxious to see this blue and see if it keeps that sheen. And then we'll try that polywood, and then we'll figure out a solution for the polycarbonate and the ABS. Okay, so we're done printing all the samples from all the filament from this month's MakerBox. And as you can see by the results in front of me, we had a lot of fun printing again this month. There's so much cool filament in here. And I know from the beginning we talked about it. There's this tricolor thermochromatic lava PLA. We had the polywood, this really cool biofusion, this blue, as you can see, it just looks amazing. This is the PC PBT orange. We did have a little bit of difficulty with this because I don't have a heated build chamber, but I managed to get a few prints out and I'm really happy with it. And as you can see, this is the ABS black that we got, and we got quite a few really good prints without a heated build chamber. It's a little stinky, but it was manageable. We printed out all 50, I guess it would be 50 grams or 16 meters. So we printed out all that filament, and I have a few things to show you. But the first thing we're going to talk about is the tricolor thermochromatic lava PLA. This was really fun to print with. The specs on the sheet, which was 190 to 220 with a bed temperature from room to 60°C. Speed was not listed. Fan, of course, was listed as yes. Now, this was interesting because I thought for sure that I was going to need a heated bed for this, but I managed to get this to print on the sanded acrylic. And the prints themselves, they turned out amazing. And see if you can see these in the close-up camera while I still talk. This is some really interesting filament. I was able to print this out at 195, 200 for the first layer to get a little bit sticky, and then 195 for the rest of the print. Now, when it prints out somewhat yellow, and then as it cools off, it turns this really cool green color. I'm trying not to touch it too much because then when you apply heat to it, it changes color again. Now, I'm not sure if it's because of the geometry of that particular vase or if it just maybe I heated it up too much. I'm not exactly sure, but it didn't turn as green as the other ones sitting here in the garage cooling off. But if I apply a little bit of heat to this, you'll see right away that there's a color change, and I'll put it in place of the vase that's sitting there. That should be good enough. Well, maybe my body heat isn't enough for this today. But the Cali Cat, which is normally what we print first, and I did print this first, it came out really good. I'm super happy with the way it looked. The temperature at 200 for the first layer, 195 for the second, or all the other layers after that, turned out to be like the perfect temperature. There's a little bit of stringing, but this is my test object, so I can get printing. It's very small. It has everything I need in here to check. There's bridging. There's a angled piece here, which has a nice little curve or a nice little overhang on it. And then there's overhangs all around. There's facial detail and there's top layers. So this covered everything in one single little print. It takes like 20 minutes to print it. And with this, while it's printing, I can make adjustments to my next settings. They're going to be for the following prints for that particular sample. So if you take a look at the Cali Cat, and put this back in position here. I'm sure you guys can see that there. There's the Cali Cat. It turned out really, really good. It's one of the better Cali Cats I've printed in this month's MakerBox. Now, I did have a lot of really good success with the PC PBT. I want to make sure I say that right. That Cali Cat turned out amazing too. I was actually pretty impressed because it's a very strange material. It has a funny smell to it. I thought for sure I would need a heated billet chamber, and I think I do, but I'm not sure because as you can see here, one of the prints failed. It was too thin and started to fall apart, and this other one turned out great. But we'll talk about that in a minute. I'm getting ahead of myself. So for the rest of the tricolor thermochromatic lava PLA, let's see, we printed out, this is the G-Create Wave Vase, I believe it is, or Wave Trash Can. It's a really cool vase print. This is the tiniest version I've ever printed, and I believe this was at a 0.24 millimeter layer height. And it really turned out fantastic. I'm super happy with the way that turned out. And the other thing I printed, now, like I said in my previous review of a MakerBox, which you can watch that video here, I like to print out stuff that would be useful to that filament's type. Now, in this particular one, I kind of got hung up on some vases, but I can tell you about the filament, but there's not as much practical items, I guess. But this was a practical item I printed. This is a little cable holder. I'll put this up here on the close-up camera, so if you guys can see that. That's a little cable holder for iPads or iPhones. And what I thought is that if it gets too hot, it's going to change color. Now, I haven't tried it yet, but I think it'll work with like a laptop cable. I think that's a great idea. If your cable's getting a little bit hot, you'll be able to see that visually out of the corner of your eye and know that maybe your laptop or your computer is getting a little bit too hot. So I printed that out. I haven't, like I said, I haven't tested whether or not it actually works, but the let me make sure I say that right. The thermochromic aspects and properties of this filament are exactly as they stated on here. It says here, objects are green at room temperature, then turn pink when held in hands, and yellow at higher temps. So when you're printing it, you'll see the yellow. When it cools off, you'll see the green. And if you apply just a little bit of heat to it, it gets kind of this mauve color here. So this is a really fun filament to print with. I didn't use all of it because I kept a little bit for some Halloween stuff. And I thought this might come in handy for some eyes, or I don't know. I'll figure out something to use. I just didn't want to use it all. And normally I do try to use up all the samples. And like I said, I did use up all that black ABS. So the thermochromic lava PLA, the tricolor from Capricorn, this is a really cool filament. If you can get your hands on some of it, I definitely check it out and print out some cool stuff and try some different heating and cooling methods to see how it all turns out. Next up was the Polywood from Polymaker. Now this was super easy to print with. I've never really printed with any of the Polymaker. I do have a sample set that I got from CES quite some time ago, but I was avoiding printing with samples because I had so many other projects on the table. But when the MakerBox came along, I think I want to print some of the samples that came along and explore some of the other filaments, because this filament was super easy to print with. The specs on the package here, 190 to 210 for the hot end, room to 60 C for the bed temperature, 30 to 50 millimeters per second for the speed, and of course use the fan. Now this isn't actually wood fill filament. This is actually just PLA, and it says here with using a special foaming technology, it makes it look like wood fill. And I can tell you, if we turn this around here to the front, where you can see the wood fill prints, this, or non-wood fill prints, the non-wood fill wood PLA, I guess would be the way to say it. These turned out perfect. There was no problems whatsoever. In fact, after I printed the Cali Cat, I knew right away that whatever settings I had set up from the previous print, which was the thermochromic filament, they were basically the same settings. So I started off with 200 on the first layer and dropped it down to 195 on the, for all the layers after that. And we printed it at about 40 to 45 millimeters per second on the sanded acrylic bed of the G-Max 1.5 XT Plus. And that little Cali Cat turned out pretty good. There is some stringing on the tail there, but in general, the print itself turned out really great. And the overhangs and all the detail turned out really clean. Super happy with the way it looked. So it was time to print the rose twist vase. Now, I didn't print the rose twist vase right away with the thermochromic filament. That's why I didn't talk about it right away. I printed this actually last because I got so excited about it, I just kind of forgot about it. But with the polywood, I tried to go in order, which is normally the Cali Cat and then this rose twist vase. So I'm trying a highly detailed model, in my opinion, with lots of features. And then I'm going into vase mode to see how the layer adhesion handles at the temperature that I've picked from running my Cali Cat. So the rose twist vase, that actually turned out pretty perfect. This has a unique texture to it, a unique look to it. It does have kind of a look of wood, but the surface, because of that foaming agent that's put in, or foaming technology, it looks a little bit more like a glint filament more than a wood filament. But either way, it has wood-like characteristics. I haven't tried to sand it or stain it. I don't think that would work, but it looks like wood. After I was done printing my 2 test objects, I printed out this cool little Aztec guy, because I printed out this little model before. This is a good test print as well. And it turned out really great. There was some stringing, a little bit of stringing on it, but it didn't have the typical wood fill filament problems during printing because it doesn't have any wood fill. But it does look like it. It has the same texture on it. Again, it looks a little glinty because of that foaming agent leaves these microscopic little pits along the whole surface of the print. But it does have a little bit of a wood look to it. And this turned out really good. Again, I print everything on the G-Max 1.5 XT Plus, no matter what the instructions say, because that's a super reliable printer. This printed directly on the sanded acrylic with no heated bed, no problems whatsoever, no warping, no blobs, no globs, just a little bit of stringing. Super happy with the way that turned out. Now I have a little bit of this filament left. I'm probably going to just keep it and not print any more with it. It's not wood fill filament, which is something I'm very much interested in. But it is an interesting filament. It is a very, I would say it's a decorative style filament because it isn't actually wood, it just looks like it. So easy to print with, really cool texture, no problems whatsoever. Specs on the bag exactly as advertised, printed that way. You don't need a heated bed, so don't even bother with the bed temperature of room to 60, go with room. If you're gonna print on glass, obviously use some sort of bed adhesion assistance. But the polywood from Polymaker, really cool filament. Next up was the really cool biofusion filament from Extrudr. Now, on first appearance, it has kind of a matte finish to it. It's a really cool blue looking. But when you print with it, let me turn this around so you guys can see those models, it becomes like this ultra awesome blue metallic filament. It's just, that is the coolest filament I printed with as far as appearance goes in a long time. It was really easy to print with. But this is where I made the switch to the heated bed on the G-Max. My initial print, which I don't have in front of me, it stuck to the acrylic too much, which has always been a problem with certain kinds of filament. So I thought, let's go ahead and switch to the heated bed because I was going to be moving on to heated bed type materials, and that's what we did. So with the biofusion, the settings say 205 to 230, a bed temperature of 60 to 90 C, and speeds from 60 to 90 millimeters per second, and cooling at 30%. Now, I went ahead and did the usual steps, which I normally do. Where's my little Cali Cat? There he is. I did the normal steps that I normally do when I print a model out, which is to print out the Cali Cat first, and it turned out amazing. I was actually kind of blown away with what I saw. I was expecting kind of a matte satin finish, and when it came out all shiny like this, now obviously if you printed at different temperatures, sometimes that'll leave a different finish at the end, but I didn't need to experiment because this print turned out great. There's a little stringing on the tail, but all the detail, the overhangs and everything look really good. There was a little bit of curling, so I knew the heat might be an issue, but we're now printing on the heated bed. So this print turned out really great. The first test print was the rose twist vase on the sanded acrylic, and when it stuck, I stopped and realized I should have read the instructions more carefully. It's saying heated bed specifically. So when I stopped at that point, I didn't want to print another rose twist vase until I had printed the Cali Cat, and I knew exactly what my settings were. So we went ahead and printed the rose twist vase. And again, I was just blown away. I mean, that just looks so amazing. There's so much color reflection off of it. It has a super reflective surface once printed. It goes from matte to super shiny, and it really does pop. The filament prints, as advertised, 205 to 230. I went with 215. I tried to draw a middle of the road area. 215 for the first layer, 210 for the second layer, and then I went ahead with 70C on the bed. Now for speed, I like to print things at 40, 50 millimeters per second because I have a really big printer and there's a lot of mass moving. If I print things really fast, I get a low quality result, like a draft mode. So I keep it between 40 and 50. In this instance, I probably printed these at 45 millimeters per second. And of course, I did my cooling at 40% because the G-Max is a really strong fan and I felt that 40% was better. But the prints themselves, they turned out great. The filament prints perfectly. Again, use the heated bed, very much important. If you try to print on like the sanded acrylic or something that doesn't have a non-porous or non-textured surface, then that may cause problems. You'll have to use some sort of bed adhesion. So after I printed out the rose twist vase and the Cali Cat, both looked really cool, I went ahead and printed out Devin Montes' really cool monochromatic vase. Now, the reason why I printed that was I wanted to see how much light it actually would catch and reflect, and to see how durable it was. This is a really strong geometry, and it has a lot of polygons in it, so it's super strong once it's printed, and it turned out amazing. And the really cool thing is this is printed at a 0.28 millimeter layer height, and you really can't tell because of how glossy it is. Now, I've learned over the few years that I've been 3D printing, the glossier or the glintier the filament, it hides the layer lines and some of the imperfections better. But with this filament, because it's so shiny, if there's an imperfection, it's gonna pop right out. And all the prints turned out amazing. This is some really, really cool filament. And I only have a little bit left, but I don't think I'm gonna print with it. I think I'm gonna save it, and I'm gonna ask for more of this, because this is some really cool filament. They have some really cool other colors too, so check it out. This is Extrudr, and this was their Biofusion, I think it was Fire Blue or something that it didn't say here on the package. Next up, we printed out the PC PBT, and let's go ahead and spin around for that, because we printed the ABS last. Now with this filament, I really wasn't sure what to expect. This is some sort of polycarbonate plus polybutylene terephthalate. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. It's just a polycarbonate, it's a mix, it's a blend. And I believe this is a ABS style because of the smell that I smelled, and it was kind of stinky. As you can see, we do have quite a bit left. It was really interesting how it printed. It didn't print bad in the beginning. It printed quite perfectly, which we printed the Cali Cat, and that is probably one of the best Cali Cats I've ever printed. There's some minor stringing on the tail. I kind of expected that, but I've seen that in most of my prints in this round. But the quality of the rest of the prints on the Cali Cat is amazing. So I wasn't sure. We were using the heated bed, which the listed temperature, let's go over the specs, 235 to 250C on the hot end, 110C on the bed. A speed says not listed, fan off or low, and it says suggesting an ABS slurry, PEI bed, or glue-on bed, enclosure and ventilation advised. Now it is very stinky, and you definitely should use some ventilation. I had the door open for the garage and I had a fan going, and I could still kind of smell it the closer I got to the printer. But without a heated build chamber and proper ventilation, I don't think I would have as many problems as I did, because the next print I did was the rose twist vase, and it started to do the inner layer warping, and it's separating with layer adhesion started going all over the place. And that was the results of it. I stopped the print because it was already starting to pop up off the bed. Now, the Cali Cat printed just fine without a heated enclosure, but this didn't. So I wanted to try one more, and I wanted to put a bit longer of a print, so I went ahead and printed out Devin's monochromatic vase again, and it actually worked. It's actually really sturdy, it's a really strong print. I did no settings changes. I went ahead and stuck with mine, which was 240C on the hot end, 100 degrees C on the bed. I did print everything out at 40 millimeters per second. I did turn the fan off, which I believe helps out a lot. I think I had the fan at 20% when I printed this, and that may have been part of the problem. And of course, I'm printing on BuildTech on the heated bed on the G-Max with no bed adhesion assistance at all. So it printed out pretty darn perfect. I mean, this is a pretty solid model. I'm really happy with the way this looks. It's not watertight. I only went with one bottom layer, and I can see some holes in it. You need more layers on the bottom to make it watertight. But the print itself turned out great. I mean, I still have some filament left because I want to make sure that I print this properly, and I'm going to build some sort of heated enclosure for the G-Max that I can just slide over the top of it when I'm printing filaments like this. But that'll be in the future. But for now, I've got a little bit left, and we'll try that once we build the enclosure. And as far as the prints that I did successfully get out, which is the Cali Cat, one of the nicest looking Cali Cats ever, and this monochromatic vase from Devin Montes, these turned out great. I'm really happy with the way they look. And this is a really cool filament too. It's got a bit of a shine to it, a little bit of a gloss to it, not much, but you really can't see the layer lines. It seems to, the layers bond together at that right temperature. Now I think I did kick it up to 245 C for this print, just to make sure we had some layer bonding, because this didn't work. So all in all, this is some really cool filament. Definitely go with the recommended settings on here. Definitely enclosure and ventilation right off the top. As far as the heat settings go, you'll probably have to play with it a little bit depending on your printer and your hot end and such, but I had some really great success with it. So I was really happy with the way it turned out. This is from Push Plastics. This is the PC PBT Orange. Cool stuff. I definitely would try it out with a proper printer. And last but not least was the ABS Black from Atomic Filament. Now let's go ahead and spin her around so you guys can see those prints. This was a very fun filament to print with. Now this is my first ABS print. I've never printed with ABS before because I didn't feel like I had the proper printer to do so. But with this, I figured since I had some success with the PC PBT filament that the ABS would not be a problem. And of course, I was right. I was able to, here's the specs off the bag. It says 240 to 250 C on the hot end, 90 to 110 C on the bed. Speed is not listed, fan off or low, and of course, enclosure and ventilation advised. Now there's a description which you can see on Atomic Filament's website, but this appears to be some really super strong filament from what the description says. Now what I ended up printing this was at 245 because I don't want to raise my hot end over 250. And 100 degrees C on the bed. And I figured that was perfect temperature for it, and I was actually right. Now, what I did use, it says off or low for the fan. I did start the first print at 20% fan, which would be our Cali Cat, and that little Cali Cat turned out pretty amazing. Again, this is a perfect test model. All the links for all the models that we print are always down in the description, so you guys can download and print them yourselves. But if you're looking for a super quick test model that will give you all the information you need in one quick 20-minute print, depending on layer height and speed, the Cali Cat is perfect. And this guy turned out amazing. I'm really happy with the way this looks. This was my first ABS print. I used some ventilation, opened the door, a little bit of fan, and I did have a pretty warm bed. Of course, the ambient temperature here is about 80, 82 degrees Fahrenheit. So I think that's enough ambient heat in the room to print with. And I was right. The Cali Cat turned out really, really cool. It's a really interesting filament because even though I did a really high layer height, I think this was 0.24, it actually turned out really clean. I was surprised. The rest of the prints turned out very much the same way. I did stop the rose twist vase because I had actually printed out some other stuff before I got to this. Now, boo-boo on me. I have to stick to my methods and print this first, so I always have a copy of the rose twist vase because this is a really cool vase to print. It's super fast. As you can see, there's a hole in the bottom of it. That was my problem print. What I ended up doing was printing another monochromatic vase from Devin Montes because these are super cool test prints. They really show off the filament, and if you print them right, they're super strong, and if the filament works and you have no problems at all, this could actually be a practical print. You could use this as a little tiny silk flower vase holder type of thing. But the print itself, it looks great. I'm super happy with the results. This ABS is very interesting to print with. I didn't smell it too much outside just the area around the printer. I would imagine in a smaller enclosed area, in a longer print, I mean, obviously these things take 30, 40 minutes at max to print. I'm sure the smell would be a little stronger, but I use proper ventilation at all times. But this turned out really good. I'm super happy with the way this looks. It's nice and clean. You can barely see the layers. It's really tough too. I mean, that sounds solid even though it's a vase print. It's a single perimeter out of the 0.5mm nozzle on the G-Max. So we're still not to this point. I wanted to print out something practical, and we're coming up on Halloween, and I remember these cool little cat on the moon little wall hangers. So I printed out two little twins, two at the same time, so you guys can see those. And these turned out great. I know these are gonna last a long time because they're printed in ABS. The smell wasn't too bad. I just used the duplicate and mirror function within the slicer to make two copies. It's not that these come as one, it's not that they have two different versions. And the prints turned out great. They're a little bit on the retraction blob side. I don't know if you guys can see that, I'll put it there. But I think that's because I didn't designate a seam. Now, normally in your slicer, you can designate a certain area where your seam is, or it can go random or for faster printing. This, I think, was set for faster printing, and it leaves blobs everywhere. Plus, this is ABS. I wasn't expecting it to turn out perfectly. And I think I printed this at a 0.24 millimeter layer height, which on this little angle here, you're gonna get some blobs and some funkiness because it's a tight little angle. Higher or lower layer heights will bring out the detail better on stuff like this. But these prints turned out perfect. They printed out, I popped them off the bed, no problems whatsoever. So I remembered that I did not have a rose twist vase, and I officially had my first print where I ran out of filament during a print, and there was nothing else I could do but just shut it off. I had like this much left sticking out of the extruder, out of the top of the G-Max. And besides sticking to the bed, which was the first time, I did use heat and everything else, but I think I was a little bit too aggressive on it, and it is a single bottom layer, not multiple, which gives a really weak structure. You can actually hear how weak that is. But it ran out right there. But what did print turned out awesome. This is, again, ABS black from Atomic Filament, and this print turned out really great. I'm super happy with the way that looks. I wish I had more of this filament to print some more stuff, but I would want to use a heated enclosure and proper ventilation, because with these types of filaments, if you're warned on the packaging you should do it, then you should do it. So this might be a time to wait until I do have proper ventilation and closure around my G-Max. But for now, I used everything that was there, and I'm pretty happy about this. Now, again, the temperatures were 240 to 250, 90 to 110 C. I had luck at 245 and 100 degrees C on the bed. I did turn off the fan once I realized that was going to be an issue because it needs all that heat to stay bonded. And we printed everything out at 40 to 45 millimeters per second. So overall, we had 5 new filament samples from 5 different manufacturers. And with all the prints that we did, I'd say it was a success. This was a really, really cool month of samples from MakerBox. I love seeing all these cool different kinds of materials and different types of materials that have different properties. And this was a really good example. Everything in here is completely different. There's nothing in here that is the same in the same category or even the same type of filament. Each filament sample from each manufacturer is completely unique. And that isn't something you can't find in most subscription boxes. You usually get a roll or a couple rolls, which is the new fad. You don't really get something like this where you really want to try out every single filament and really see how they print. I'm super happy with the way everything turned out. Again, this was a really cool month of MakerBox testing. Along with all that filament, if you remember in the beginning when we did the unboxing, we did get a cool little calendar. There is some announcement of some premium PLA from Capricorn. Another little Makerbot button, which is always cool to get. Another little sticker. We did get a Capricorn sticker. And another little piece of Gecko Tech. And of course, some candy to eat. This is a really great month of samples from MakerBox. I was really happy with the way all of our prints turned out. None of these caused me any frustration. They were fun to print with. If you make 3D printing fun and just take your time, enjoy the process of testing and figuring out which settings work best for you for each filament. You can use my recommendations, or I would actually, in fact, not use my recommendations, but use it as a guide, because your printer will be different. All the settings probably will be different for your slicer, but with the work that I was able to put out here with these filaments in this MakerBox, I'm super happy with the way everything turned out. These are some really, really great prints. If you're looking for something really cool to subscribe to, they have 3 levels, I believe, of subscription services. This is the middle one, which gives you 5 samples. And I think this is the ideal setup for everybody, because if you really want a monthly box that comes in with some unique filaments that you can try out, definitely check out MakerBox. At the end of the video, you'll find some photos and some video close-ups of all the prints that we did. And again, links for everything will be down in the description, along with a link where you can get your own MakerBox subscription. And of course, a huge shout out to MakerBox for sending this over to the channel for us to review. It was a lot of fun printing with this month's filaments. I'm anxious to see what August has in store for us. Of course, we weren't compensated in any way for our opinion, our review, or the unboxing. We do get to keep the filament samples, but we try to print everything that we get. Well, that about wraps it up for this month's MakerBox review. I hope you guys enjoy this content, and if you're looking for ways to support the channel, check out all the affiliate links down in the description. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, comment, like, and share those videos, and I'll talk to you guys soon.